Okay, so going over the print and play Yu-Gi-Oh! Forbidden Memories, how I made it, and the rules to playing a campaign for now. Like, I was thinking about changing it later, because I'll probably do more than one, and each one, the next one will probably be closer to the actual way the story mode works in the game, but this one was just like a simple test run to see how things would work, and it actually seems to be working pretty well. So, I'll start with how I made it. There are over 700 cards in the game, and I would need to print 6 copies of every card, because 3 for the player, 3 for the DM, and that would just be a lot of cards. So I ended up narrowing it down to about like 300 cards, which still ended up being over 1,000 cards. Well over 1,000 cards. Yeah, so I would use the Yugipedia to get the artwork, or the straight up cards. They have everything. They have a card gallery, card list. You can get everything on there. I would go in, save the image, drop it into my photo editing software. So in the game there are actually 2 card layouts. So you have this classic layout where the attack and defense are written really big, and then here would be like the text box where like flavor text and rules text would go. There are no effect monsters in this game, so everything's just flavor text. But that doesn't matter for our purposes, so this layout actually worked out really well because you could put the Guardian Stars in that box. So I went with this layout. But if you're grabbing this layout, this is from the like examine menu, where there's a whole nother section to the cards that's got like the, because this text isn't legible. I don't even think it's real text. It's just like a bunch of like squiggly lines. So they put the actual flavor text off to the side. So I have to crop the card. I have a poker card template that I got from thegamecrafter.com, which I use for everything that I do. Whenever I'm making cards, I use that as my base. I put it on that, you know, so these are made in poker size, not Yu-Gi-Oh size. Export the images, put them all into a folder, highlight all of them, right click, hit print. It brings up like the photo print thing, and I do wallet size, and I uncheck that way, because if you have that checked, it makes them a little wider, and then they don't really fit in standard sleeves. This, when they print it this size, they're kind of like in between a Yu-Gi-Oh card and a standard card, and it makes them fit in a Yu-Gi-Oh sleeve, but like just barely, like it's kind of tight, but you can put them in a standard sleeve real easy. I just slapped basic lands behind them and put them in the sleeve, you know, typical print and play stuff. So that's what I did for making the game. One last thing I printed was the Guardian Star correlations. I also wrote in some additional notes on like what each Guardian Star actually represents, because that can affect some things like field spell bonuses and like the way cards fuse, because cards can have subtypes. It's not that type. If its first Guardian Star is something else, then it'll be that type too. Like something could be like like a spellcaster, but then its first Guardian Star is Mars, so it's also fire. Like I think Flame Manipulator's like that, but Flame Manipulator also is considered fire because he literally has flame in his name. Anything with flame or fire in its name is also considered fire. But that's getting into the way the game actually plays, which I think we're done with how I... Oh, one last thing. The fusions. Oh, maybe I should show you how much this is. Like, this is it. I think my friend's deck is here. Yeah. So the fusions I put in clear sleeves, and on the back I put their fusion material and the attack power that they have to be lower than in order to make that fusion. So anytime you fuse something, you go with the lowest attack possible. You can't skip over to bigger fusions. But again, that's getting into the way the game is played. When I was picking what cards to use and what like fusions would be possible, I decided to skip over any spell or trap fusions just to keep it simple. So not only did I cut it down to like half the cards, less than half the cards in the game, but I also was like, I'm not dealing with being able to fuse spell and trap cards together to make new spell and trap cards, or that would just, at least for now, that's too much. I know I was thinking about putting all this in the tabletop simulator, and if I did, I would probably end up putting every single card in. What is it, like 721 cards? Because like, I'm not printing it, it's free. I could do that, and it's not gonna take up space. Like, imagine this double. Like, this is so many cards already, and to like double this, more than double this, that'd be insane. Now, so yeah, so if you're gonna print and play it, I recommend like cutting it down. I guess I could share the card list of what I used, or you could just make your own. The way I did it was I broke stuff up into tiers, because in the video game, whenever you win a duel, you get one card based on like how well you did, and then it's like based on a tier system that goes like D, C, B, A, S. And it's kind of complicated because there's like power and tech, and like B, C, and D, power and tech are all the same card pool, and then POW A and S are a card pool, and then Tech A and S are a card pool. But yeah, based on those letters, I decided to make card pool tiers, where for monsters it was easy because I just went based on their level. So like D tier is level 1s and 2s, C tier is level 3s and 4s, B tier is level 5s and 6, A tier is 7 and 8, and S tier is anything over like 9 or higher. And for spell and traps, I just kind of went off of how hard those cards are to get in the game. So if they're a starter deck card, I was either putting them in like D or C. I think C. I don't think I put any spell or traps in D. So they're like in C, and then you know, from there it was like, how many star chips does it cost to get this card? How easy is it to get this card? Like, what drop rate does it have when you're playing against someone? Yeah. And then finally, like, the power of the card. That was mostly for like trap cards. It was really easy to tell like how strong a trap card is, because yeah, the trap cards in this game are all just removal. Everything's just a Sekretsu armor with a big restriction on it, because there's like removal. Oh, like House of Adhesive Tape, I think, is like it destroys an attacking monster with 500 or less attack. With 500 or less attack. I didn't even put it in here because, like, when is someone going to attack with something with 500 attack? Like, that is ridiculous. So I think I just started with like Tripwire, which was like destroy an attacking monster with 2,000 or less attack, and then Acid Trap Hole is destroy a monster with 3,000 or less attack, and Widespread Ruin is destroy an attacking monster. The attack power doesn't matter, so Widespread Ruin is the best trap card in the game. I think there's definitely one for 1,000 or less, and I can't remember what it is. But yeah, so I put like the 1,000 or less one, I think, in like D tier Acid Trap, or not in D tier, in C tier Acid Trap Hole, and B tier, right? Widespread Ruin in A tier? That sounds about right. Something like that. Who knows? It's been a while since I actually made it, and it's been a while since we played it, so I may have forgotten some stuff. Yeah. So then I had to go through and construct my own decks to be the DM, and then break those decks up into tiers because of the way the campaign works. That's important. So then I was only pulling cards from that tier and lower. So like a B tier deck can have like B, C, and D tier cards, but not A or S. And then player, you construct their deck out of D and C tier cards, and just like the video game, I did a random equip spell, a random field spell, and either Dark Hole or Raigeki, because that is literally how the starter deck works in the actual video game. And then I just broke up the remaining cards, anything that I didn't use to build my decks, and anything that wasn't in the player's starter deck, then I just put into tiers of random cards. So that's the pools that cards are going to come from when you... In each tier, I tried to do 5 monsters of each type. If you try to make this, you'll see that that's not always possible. Not every monster type exists at every level, and even in like some cases, there's just not that many in there. Like, I think there's no like level 1 or 2 sea serpents. So like when I was making like the D tier pool, I was like, wow, no sea serpents here. And then another really important thing to print out are these Guardian Star counters, which are really important. I printed out 10 of each, because I mean, there's never probably gonna be an instance where like both players have 5 each of the same Guardian Star out, but you know, you never know, they could. But yeah, whenever you play a monster, you gotta put one of these on it, so it's good to have these. I shouldn't have a table in front of me. I keep fucking... Yeah, so the actual rules of the game. You can have 5 monster cards out, 5 spell and traps out. You know, just like regular Yu-Gi-Oh! But then things get really, really complicated. Well, or really simplified, depending on how you look at it. So, on your turn, you will draw up to 5 cards. It's not just like draw 1 card. You draw until you have 5 cards in your hand. You have to play at least 1 card. So you can choose a card from your hand to play. If you just play a single card from your hand, you can choose to have it face up or face down. If it's a spell or trap, it'll go in the spell or trap zone. There's no field spell zone, so if you set a field spell, it'll still just go in the regular spell and trap zone. And then when you play it, it won't stay out, it'll just go away. No spell or traps stay out. Equip spells, we'll get to how those work. They also don't stay out. Yeah, if you play a monster card from your hand, you choose face up or face down, it'll always come out in attack position, even if it's face down. And then, as long as you don't attack with it, you can change its battle position as many times as you want. But once you attack with it, then it has to stay in attack position. And if you put it face down, the only way it can flip up is by battling. So if you put it in face down defense position, it'll flip up when it gets attacked. If you put it in face down attack position and attack with it, which you can do, it'll flip up. But you can't just choose to flip up a face down monster. If you want, you can fuse as many cards in your hand as you want. So you could fuse all 5 cards in your hand, and then you can fuse with up to 1 card in play. Like I said, I left out all the spell and trap fusions, so for the most part, you're going to be fusing with monsters, but equips work like fusing. It's weird. We'll get into that again, like I said, when we get into equip spells. So you can fuse like your entire hand with a monster on the board, like fuse 6 monsters in that case, and then that counts as playing your card, even if you're like fusing. And that's how you can draw more cards during your turn. If the fusion is successful, then you get the new monster. If the fusion isn't successful, then like the last card in the line stays. So I guess I should have mentioned that like when you're fusing, order matters. So you're like, okay, I want to fuse these 2 monsters. This is 1, this is 2. If they're unsuccessful, 1 will just get discarded and 2 will stay. When you attempt a fusion, you cannot put that monster face down. So whether the fusion is successful or not, whatever the result is, that monster's coming in face up. If you have 5 monsters on the board and go to play a monster, which is probably going to happen because you're going to have way more monsters in your deck than spell and traps, you're going to have to fuse. Because, yeah, you have to play a card. You don't have a choice. Then, once you play a card, then you can attack with monsters, activate your face down spell and trap cards. If you activate a trap card during your own turn, it'll just fizzle, because all trap cards in this game are activated in response to an attack. Also, trap cards are not optional. As soon as their condition is met, they have to activate. So if you set a widespread ruin, which I don't know if you can read it on here, but it says, when an opponent's monster attacks, it is blown to smithereens and eliminated from the playfield. They use a lot of flavorful rules text in this game. But, yeah, you don't get to choose when that activates. The first monster your opponent attacks with will set off Widespread Ruin. So you just gotta kind of hope they attack with their biggest monster first, I guess. When you play a monster, whether it's face up or face down, you have to choose a Guardian Star. The DM, who is like representing like the CPU in the video game, always has to choose the first Guardian Star on the card. So that's how it works in the video game. It just makes it more fair. It's probably the only fair thing in this game. What else? Oh, so equip spells. They're equipped via fusion, basically. So that doesn't really mean anything for this physical game. It's more of like in the video game, knowing that the way that you don't activate a equip spell and then choose a target like you do in the actual game. You go like, oh, I'm fusing this equip spell with this monster, which I guess actually kind of does matter when you're playing physically. So good thing I mentioned that. So yeah, you don't activate a equip spell, so you don't need an open spell or trap slot to do an equip spell. Actually, you don't need an open spell or trap slot to do any spell card. So when you use an equip spell, if you're playing it from your hand, you'll choose a card to fuse it with, and then we were just putting like a D6 on it with like the 5 pip up to show that it got 500 attack, because every spell gives 500 attack except for like one, which I don't even think I included in here, that gives like 1,000. Yeah, the equip spells don't say how much they boost by. Like, did I print any on this test sheet? No. Pretty much all attack increases and decreases across the board are 500 for like all equip spells, all field spell bonuses. So if you set an equip spell face down, and then when you use it later, then you do kind of activate it. Like you'll flip it face up and then choose a monster and it'll equip to it, but like kind of fuse to it in the same way. It's weird. Yeah, so getting on to like field spells. Like I was saying, there's no field spell zone. It's just the 5 spell and trap zones. But if your spell and trap zones are all full, like you have like 5 spell and trap cards set, and you want to play a field spell, you can do that. You don't actually need an open spot to play a card play a spell or trap from your hand. You can play a trap from your hand, it just won't do anything. It'll just fizzle. Yeah, and then we were just leaving the field spell out in like the center of the board just to like mark that it's active, because in the video game it will change the color of the field and then that card's just gone. So you can't remove a field spell without another field spell. There's nothing that destroys spell and traps in this anyway. But like even if there was, there's no field spell to target. If you set a field spell face down, it'll go in your regular spell and trap zone, and then you can activate it on your turn. So just to clarify, you cannot activate any of your face down spell and trap cards until you play a card or fuse for the turn. Like you have to play your one card for the turn before you can activate the stuff that's already out, which is why Dark Hole is not as good as Raigeki, because you'll play your monster for the turn and then Dark Hole and just wipe the whole board and then pass on an empty board. Whereas Raigeki, you play your monster for the turn, then you Raigeki, and your monsters are safe. To the point that I think like speedrunners actually reset if they get Dark Hole in their starting deck instead of Raigeki. I could be wrong. Even in a casual playthrough, I'd recommend like just reset. if you get Dark Hole, it's not good. Is that about like all the rules? Oh, combat, like battling. Battling works just like it does in the real card game. When 2 attack position monsters battle, the one with less attack is destroyed and its controller takes battle damage equal to the difference in the attack. If a defense position monster is destroyed, there's no battle damage. If an attacking monster attacks into a defense position monster with higher defense, then the attacker will take battle damage equal to the difference, and neither card gets destroyed. If the attack and defense are the same, no battle damage, nothing gets destroyed. If 2 attack position monsters with the same attack battle, they both get destroyed. Battling is where this becomes important. So the one that the arrow is pointing from gets a 500 attack or defense boost while they're battling. So like if a sun attacks a moon or gets attacked by a moon, then the sun card will get 500 attack or 500 defense depending on like its position. So you have 8,000 life points, just like in the real card game. You have to have exactly a 40 card deck. Forgot to mention that. Can't have more than 40 cards. Has to be exactly 40 cards. So I built 5 40 card decks. Right? 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah. As the DM, one for each tier. The 2 win conditions are reduce your opponent's life points to 0 or make your opponent run out of cards. If at any point you cannot draw up to 5 cards, you lose. Yeah. So I guess that's pretty much all the rules for the game. If it wasn't clear, monster levels don't matter. You can like play a level 8 monster from your hand. There's no tributes. Just drop it for free. Fusions. Yeah, I talked a little bit about them when I was talking about printing them. I guess that's something. So like this is an Aqua Dragon, less than 1600 attack. So basically, as the DM, I would just have like all of the fusion cards laid out and like hidden from the player so they can't see what fuses into what. It's kind of like part of the gameplay is trying to figure out what fusions are. And so yeah, basically this would just mean you fuse an Aqua and a Dragon, and both of them have to have less than 1600 attack to make this. You can never fuse into something with less attack. You can fuse into something with less defense, but never something with less attack. For the purposes of fusions, sea serpents are always considered dragons. Anything with dragon in its name is considered a dragon. So like Thunder Dragon, its type is technically thunder, but it has dragon in its name, so it's a dragon. Anything with like Pluto, Pluto as its first guardian star, Pluto is thunder. So I think most things that have Pluto as their first guardian star actually are thunder though. So anything with dragon in its name is a dragon, except if it is a winged beast. Why? I have no idea. The best example I have is Winged Dragon number 2. It's a winged beast, and it does not count as a dragon. But for some reason, Winged Dragon number 1 is a dragon type. I don't know why they did that, honestly. That was weird. But yeah, all sea serpents are dragons. Even in like the flavor text on most of them, it literally refers to them as dragons. It doesn't even refer to them as like sea serpents or sea monsters or anything. You're just like, oh, this is a dragon. And so when you're fusing, if you fuse with a sea serpent, it's a dragon. I would recommend looking into the like Yu-Gi-Oh wiki or the Yugipedia if you're trying to figure out how fusions, like what fusion materials make what, because it does get a little confusing and subtypes do exist. There's even additional subtypes like turtle, female, what else? Dark. Dark is actually a pretty prevalent subtype because nothing had attributes yet. The guardian stars were essentially the attributes. So something like Dark Magician, who's a spellcaster and a dark attribute in the actual card game, is like a spellcaster with Mercury as the first guardian star, making him dark. The campaign rules are very simple. The DM starts with their D tier deck, and then whenever the player defeats a deck, they're able to move up to the next tier, and they can at any time go back and play against the lower tier deck, just like farm cards if they want to. So whenever the player wins, they automatically get one card from that card pool, and then they also get star chips for winning. They get one star chip for every 1,000 life points they have remaining. So if they manage to take no damage, they'll get 8 star chips. And then, what was it? I think I did it with, for 8 star chips, they can get a D tier card. 12 star chips, they can get a C tier card. 16 star chips, they can get a B tier card. 20 star chips, they can get an A tier card. And 24 star chips, they can get an S tier card. Yeah, just to allow them to build a stronger deck before, taking on the stronger DM decks. And the campaign ends when they beat the S tier deck. That is the current campaign. So I guess just if you're thinking about doing this, there's the S tier cards. So here's just an example of my D tier deck. So the D tier deck is all level 1 and 2 monsters. I think there's Fake Trap. That's actually a pretty good early trap. It negates an attack but doesn't destroy the monster. Wasteland, Forest, just some goofy little deck build. Something that's not too hard for someone to beat. What's like the highest attack is like 800, and it's all plant, rock, spellcaster, so it can like fuse into into like some small fusions. One of the things I was mentioning though is like female is a subtype, so like Magician of Faith is a spellcaster, but like she'll also be considered female. If you look up like Mystical Sand on the Yu-Gi-Oh Wikia and then look up like what the materials are, it'll literally be like female plus rock. So like you could fuse like Ancient Jar and Magician of Faith and get a Mystical Sand. Yeah. This does require a lot of research if you really want to do this. I guess I could show off like the document I have that kind of tries to summarize things up a little bit. Can hopefully put that up on screen. And then the S tier deck right here is like a lot of dragons. So we got like a raw Black Skull Dragon. I put this in here only as a DM exclusive card. The player cannot have this card to put in their main deck. They have to fuse with Meteor Dragon and Summon Skull. I just wanted to like show off something that the CPU does in the game. Like also same thing, Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon. Players never gonna get that in this because it is a ritual monster in the video game, and I didn't even put ritual spells in here because they're impossible to get off. Oh, here we go, Megamorph. This is the one card that increases by 1,000 attack. It literally says a card that increases the power of any selected monster by 2 levels. Also, this is the other card layout? No, that's just a spell. They have that layout. There were a few monsters that I wasn't able to get the art for the layout I preferred, and they ended up having like a layout more similar to the actual card game. So like it was like the big text box and the little attack and defense. But I like this one because like putting the type and Guardian Star information right in this little box fit in there neatly. Yeah, so I think that's about it. I hope that made sense. Hope that explains everything, how to do this yourself if you're interested. Yeah, like I was saying, I plan on doing more campaigns with this. I'd like to put it in the Tabletop Simulator, because then in that case I'd be able to do all 721 cards from the game. Because, like I said, you know, doing the print and play does cost money. Be a lot easier to do it for free in Tabletop Simulator and not have this huge box of cards I have to figure out how to store. Yeah, so I'm hoping that with like later campaigns to do maybe more like something in line with the video game, have like decks built based off of the characters and actually have like the campaign follow the story of the game a little bit, or maybe write my own campaign with those characters, and it'll be fun. Hopefully we'll have another session soon. I think he beat the B tier deck before we finished the first session, so he only has A and S left. And yeah, he might just do that in another session. Who knows? I don't know. I don't think he'll be able to beat the S tier deck without at least getting a couple trap cards. So, yeah. Thanks for watching.